Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Welcome to this very special program on International Women's Day 2019. And we are celebrating International Women's Day here in our PTV studios. What better way to celebrate than talking about women in media? That is the focus of our discussion today. And we are going to talk about, what is it like for the women who are working in media, the prominent faces, people who want to come into media, for people in Pakistan, girls in Pakistan, how, those tips, advice, what is it really like, the myths, and we're going to debunk some of those myths and come along to facts. So for that, we're very happy to have with us in our studios a wonderful panel of the faces of Pakistan. And I'm going to start with the anchors who are on my left. Gharida Frooqi, you are a well-known face. And seated next to Gharida is Fereeha Idrees from Ab Tak. Thank you very much, Fereeha, for joining us here today.
Thank you for inviting.
Right. And here we have our own channel anchors as well from PTV. From PTV News, we have Mona Alam. Mona, thank you for being here.
Pleasure, and I'd also like to welcome my colleagues from other channels who are here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Sana Maqbool, our anchor from PTV World. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shabnam. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's our guests introduced to you, and we're going to talk about their stories, how they entered the world of media, and some insights into things we may not know. So if I could start with you, Gharida, tell us a brief sort of an introduction as to how you found yourself in the world of media.
First of all, thank you very much for having me here on this auspicious day, on this very special day of International Women's Day. And happy Women's Day to all of you,
absolutely.
all of my fellow,
to everyone,
all of my fellow
and to all the men as well.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's a very important thing.
Absolutely. Celebrate the women in your life.
They are the people who are actually helping us in so many ways, and we will celebrate them too. So don't think that you're going to be out of the program.
All those who believe in Women's Day,
so
and all those who
we
do
don't
not
want the men switching off right now. Stay tuned. Okay.
Absolutely true. So in my case, coming back to your question, it was merely a stroke of luck. I did my master's in international relations, and I had the plan to join Foreign Service or United Nations. For that, I came to Islamabad. Fortunately, somehow I landed in this Pakistan television. So I'm very proud of having my career started from this mother of all the media in Pakistan. And this is my kind of alma mater, I would say, very proud of her. So I started my career off from Pakistan television, then moved to the private sector. And that's how, and then this profession became my passion, because I knew nothing about journalism when I did my master's in international relations. My focus was always towards foreign policy, towards politics. But when somehow I landed at a job in Pakistan television, so I kind of adopted it. And when I adopted it, I merged myself into this profession. And now I cannot think of living out of journalism. Living without being a journalist. And I think that's to your first part of the question. The later,
wonderful.
What did we come across?
And then we'll come across to that as well. As Gharida said, the passion of this profession slowly sort of seeps inside until it becomes sort of hard to separate yourself as a person from this very profession. Tell us about your experience.
You used the word passion, which reminds me to a later story in my career. So I'll start with that. Then I'll tell you how I came in here, because my passion started very early when I was in class 6, actually, when I was reading an essay on Reuters. And I was pronouncing it kind of wrong. And my mother corrected me and told me what it's about and why it's called Reuters and who are the reporters. And at that time, I had decided I'm going to be a reporter. So it was more like being a journalist and a reporter and a writer. And you do poetry, wonderful poetry, Shabnam. So I'm a fan.
Thank you.
But I also used to write poems when I was little. And I was one of those in my family who would be running around everyone, listen to my poem.
Oh, I know the feeling.
And they'll be running away. You know,
I know the feeling.
Yeah? And it's repeated sometimes, even now. But, and writing essays. I used to do columns in Dawn Kitty section, and I started doing an environmental column. At that time, I was the kind of kid who wanted to save all the trees in the world.
Oh, how wonderful.
And just go live in woods. And my stories were all mostly about environment, or about pandas and things like that. My father had served in China. So a lot of love for nature was instilled in me, and writing. So it was always to be a creative writer or a poet. That's what I wanted to be, getting a Nobel Literature Prize.
Always, she was aiming for the stars at a young age.
Prime Minister. I'll have to tweet as well. I don't want the Nobel Peace Prize.
There's always hope.
I'll actually have to write something to be qualified for that. But this was the dream. And later on, I started working towards it, much to resentment of my family. They thought I'm joking. I come from a very science-oriented family where they think that reading 2 books does not qualify you as educated. You really need to read science books to be somebody. So I'm sorry for all of those people who are being offended by that, but that was, my father was an engineer, and everybody in my family was studying science. So they didn't take me seriously when I was saying that. My teachers were telling them that she's very good in literature, let her go do that, but they said she's good in science also. So I had to literally fight for this, that I want to study journalism. And then later on also, when I came into journalism, I came to journalism school at Westminster, my tutor then told me that, look, creative writing is one thing and journalism is different. You'll need to understand these are 2 very different worlds. So I did literature also, but I also did a master's in broadcast journalism. And then, as I said, I was already writing, and then I started doing my part-time job at Eastern Eye newspaper in England. From there, some of my stories were picked up from for Evening Standard. From there, we did we worked on a couple of documentaries, but I never wanted to come and broadcast. That was a later idea pushed into my head. Then I came to Pakistan. Again, I was working as a news desk reporter, but they sort of thought that I should be on screen. This was something I didn't want to do. I was
so
more the
you were discovered by other people who wanted to bring you on
but then I'm happy that I did that, because I got a lot of opportunity to do things which I probably would not have been able to do then. But at the same time, till today, writing is my first passion. I'm just quickly going to tell you the story about passion.
Same here.
Went to this interview to a lady at one of the top channels in England, and she said to me that, passion, why should I hire you? And I said, because I'm very passionate about writing. And she said, I don't need passion, I need accuracy, I need objectivity. And I said, nothing will come until you have passion for that.
So true.
And to this date, I'm really happy that I said that, because no amount of force can push you to get out of your home at 2 a.m. in the morning at times, or check your phone calls, do these things.
And the commitment
not
that is
come
involved
under
in
pressure,
this field. You need
not
a lot of
listen to the negativity like Gharida keeps on telling me. You cannot do that unless you don't have passion. So passion is what derives
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Okay, Mona, what about you? Tell us about your, how you started in television.
Well, I've had a lot of career swings when it came to my professional choice, because somewhere when I was 9, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon, and I would always do this signature, and I would write beneath it, "Oh, Mona Alam, neurosurgeon," as they do in prescriptions. So that was a very funny start off that I've had with my professional career choices. Back around my teens, I reduced myself to size 0, because I wanted to be a model, and I wanted to model on the ramp and blah blah. I had this inspiration that I drew from movies and the media
An
fraternity.
Impressionable age.
That had a lot to do with my age and the hormonal maybe changes. But then eventually, I am a proud engineer. I did my engineering. I'm an electronics engineer. Eventually, when I did that, I did a couple of, I was very fond of dramatics, and I participated in a lot of plays during my school time and my college life. I did a couple of plays. I played the lead role, by the way, in one of the PTV home dramas that I did opposite Arbaz Khan and Shahood Alvi. So that was the first
that was the icebreaker.
Yeah, that
was
the icebreaker, at least when it, for the camera. For the camera, yes.
Right.
And then eventually,
so from acting to,
yes, I've had like crazy career swings, from doctor to model to engineer, and then to an actor, and then of course finally a journalist. So it ended up because I've always been an inquisitive person. I've had a very inquisitive mind, and because of that, somewhere here in PTV, I wouldn't name the lady, but she's one of the stalwarts when it comes to PTV. I happened to discuss and debate with her about politics, about IR, and she's like, what have you studied? I told her I'm an engineer. So she's like, oh, and you're doing acting. So I said yes. And you're then debating with me about politics and IR. I'm like, yeah, I do that all the time, and I'm a very inquisitive person. I love debates, and I love questioning around, and irritating people with the cranky questions. So she goes on, and she was the one who actually pitched the idea to me that, okay, I think I should propose you a show that you must do.
Okay.
And that's how it started off. I initially did a couple of reporting things that I did back in Karachi when I was based there, and then eventually I kicked off with a program. I've moved to Islamabad a few years ago, 1.5 years to be precise here, and ever since I've been here, I've freelanced with a couple of international channels, along with, of course, the show that I do for PTV News. That's the story for now. I just want to add in to the drive of passion that Fereeha and Gharida both have talked of. Passion is what drives any kind of profession that you're into. Absolutely. Because that is exactly what you need, and that is the kick of the life. I'd just like to narrate here a small bit of story that we happened to visit Russia last year. And we went to Russia Today. It was a media entourage that was taken around, and we went to Russia Today. It's now formally called Russia Today, RT as you now call it, abbreviated, but it's something else. It's a difficult Russian name that it now has to itself, the abbreviation.
Okay.
But nonetheless, they first started off Russia Today, or RT, with a 25-year-old journalist or a reporter who had no background of journalism, who had no background of any formal education in journalism. And the only reason why the state of Russia actually hired her as the CEO of that flagship RT was for her passion, for the drive of passion that she has had. They actually refused that offer. That was initially pitched into some senior stalwart journalists in the same fraternity, and they chose a 25-year-old to lead the way.
That's true, you know, because passion can overcome so many obstacles.
But I think, Shabnam, that is still a prerequisite in Pakistan. You need an educative session when it comes to Pakistan, and particularly in Pakistani journalistic sphere. That passion is the way out, and passion is what drives you. I don't think that mindset of the international fraternity is still very well engulfed in the Pakistani media heads or the journalistic backgrounders. So I think that is still something that we are lacking, but that is only in the context of journalism. I hope we get to discuss more about feminism that we are relishing.
We definitely will. Sana, let's hear about you then.
Well, I've not really had any career swings like Mona has mentioned. I have always been conflicted about what I really want to do with my life, and I have also found myself landing in media by chance. I was always interested in some sort of public speaking in school, and in colleges, and debating, and in taking part in plays. So I really enjoyed doing that, any sort of area where I could speak. So my first job was at a radio station. It was an all Pakistan, all English radio channel of Radio Pakistan, and then I started working for a private TV channel, and then I joined PTV World in 2013, and I've been here since. So I don't really know if this has now become my career choice, but it's definitely something I don't want to part ways with, because I enjoy it, I'm comfortable with it, and I really feel like that's what I want to be doing. And like Mona said, it is perhaps the mindset here that people want you to have a prerequisite of an educational background in media, and maybe that is helpful, but I haven't had any. I've done my MPhil in anthropology, and it's really got nothing to do with perhaps with journalism as such, but I feel like in my experience, what I've seen is it's more important for you to have a learning attitude and a commitment. So and you learn along the way, and you want to do something, and so you pick up a lot of things. There's people who've studied them, maybe don't really know how to. So I don't really feel that.
Learning process, isn't it? We can all learn something regardless of our age and experience. That's lovely. That's lovely to hear that as well.
All the experiences which Fereeha, which Mona, which Sana have shared, they speak of the personalities of women, of girls in our society. I mean, we are all inquisitive minds. We are all in the need of exploring ourselves. Once the society does not set the parameters for a girl, for a woman, that she has to go into this certain profession and does not has to think about any other profession, I think those barriers, all these three role model women, they have broken. I mean, just like Mona was telling, she wanted to be a neurosurgeon, then she wanted to be a model, a regular kid, I would say, a regular kid.
Yeah.
We all have been like
At
that.
that age, exactly. Yeah.
But that happens when when the society let a girl, a woman to decide for herself.
Okay, now that
Not
is a
for the
very
others.
interesting point,
That's
because
very
the thing
potent,
is, the thing is that our society,
No matter how many
does-
mistakes a girl, a
Yeah.
woman makes, she has to decide for herself.
Okay, so then where do we, I want to ask the four of you, where do we, get that passion in our girls, and how do we get them to become so confident as that they will know exactly what they want in life, and how do they achieve it, especially when we think of our cultural restrictions and the sort of environments we have at homes and different families and backgrounds?
I think we, because I have a little girl, so I think we, even when I was little, my family was the kind of family which did not stereotype me. As I told you, I had to fight on certain things, but they would give me the chance to talk to them and explain it to them. Communication was very important in my family. And I come from a very, like my father came from a very conservative background where it was not necessarily something that was allowed for women to be on television of all things. So that was all there.
Right.
But he trusted me, he gave me that confidence that I can do certain things. At the same time, there were certain barriers which I think are not there for the next generation.
True.
But still, at that time, I think I could do a lot of things which girls around me couldn't do. For instance, my father taught me to swim, to ride a bike, to ride a horse, and he would always take us wherever he was playing. We didn't have a brother, so in every place that my father went, where usually people would go with their boys,
Okay,
he would
that's
tag along
fantastic.
his little girls, and he would not even look as if it's something abnormal.
And that's
It's
exactly
like-
what you're talking about, is the way you're treated.
But also not that if you'll read Jane Austen and all that kind of timeline of 18th century in England, even she was struggling to find her identity back then. And I think we have to come out
And
of
she
that
was
mindset. You have to
criticising
get
that
married at a certain
society.
age.
Exactly.
You have to have this stereotype. You have to live. Not that confines are also important because they determine societies, but you can't push them and let them decide what they want to do. I think that's the most important thing.
Very
Like
true.
Mona says, it changes with time. So let them find their own pace.
Okay, so let me throw a question
also,
here.
I'd just like to add that how you talked about how we need to encourage passion in our women. I feel like there is a lot of passion already. There's a lot that women in the country want to do. Yeah, of course, absolutely, and they're very talented. But I feel like for women, maybe all over and also in Pakistan, a lot of what they do is a rebellious act. So and
And
perhaps we
many
can
of
encourage
those
that.
rebellious acts
everywhere
are
in the
to
world,
sort of
huh?
escape a marriage proposal as well.
Yeah, lots
There'll
of
be
chains,
a pressure
lots of chains
on
that
the
you
girl
need to
that
escape.
get married or
Yes.
otherwise.
Yeah.
And so she'll be, that's
also
unfair as
They'll
well,
introduce
isn't it?
you Tom, Dick and Harry's all over.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's also a
Yeah.
huge incentive to get you to become
yes.
more successful, isn't it?
To get
Because
into
you
You
have
have
something
to
productive
get married
to
by
escape
that
that,
certain age.
that binding.
That's what they try to impose upon you. So these are the barriers. But we were talking about what you want to do professionally. So I think that is something, as she rightly said, everybody has passion for certain thing, not necessarily for what we have
course, they have a
passion
choice
for.
to
So
choose
let
whatever they
them
wanna
decide
do.
what they do.
So being women,
being part of media, for example, Shabnam, like I feel like maybe I've heard stories about people in the past who worked in media, but of course they talk about how it wasn't as accepting as it is today, but we still lack a lot of acceptance, but maybe it's better than before. But even then, every day is still a struggle for a woman to come to a job in media than it is for a man. And perhaps for any other job also.
Absolutely right. Even now.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
even if you see that
So,
it's
right. So that's absolutely true. So as women working in the media, are we treated equally when it comes to our male counterparts? Are we getting the same pays? Are we getting that same sort of focus? What do you feel?
Well, the pay disparity is there, and there's a huge pay disparity, and that's the pay gap, plus the gender gap and the
we
pay
find
gap.
that in the Western
They go
world
hand
too.
in
It's not
hand.
something just, talking
But
about
what
Pakistan.
but the difference is, Shabnam, there is a debate going on in the West, and along with that debate, actions have been taken as well. For example, there are many female CEOs we find there. There are many female directors of the companies we find who are struggling to get the pay equivalent to their male counterparts. But that debate has not yet even started in Pakistan, even in the subcontinent. For example, if I talk about myself, if I talk about any other girl working in media industry or working anywhere, and she is single, the foremost point that is put on the table, oh, you're single, you don't need that much money.
Oh yes, or you don't have children.
What
you're married,
needs
but
do
you
you
don't
have? But that thing is
don't have
not
a family
said
to
to a male counterpart, even though we work more hours than them, we work more hard than them.
Gharida, if I may add a taboo that's been the case in this as well as, of course, the equivalence that we're talking about. There are certain expectations that they try to table to a female professional as compared to the male professional, in order to get that equivalence when it comes to your salaries or your pays or the opportunities that come your way through the parent channel or whatever organization that you're associated with. That doesn't necessarily have to be a channel. I think that's across the board, and that is the barrier that we in at least Pakistan, or as the larger subcontinent, as you said, that we need to breach and we need to surpass. That's exactly what we need to do, and that makes the task a lot more uphill for women around.
And it's not just the salary discrepancy, it's also the respect and prestige that I think the woman has to struggle more to show that she has actually used her grey matter to be there, or has not used any connections. This is just general assumption, which is really sickening. I must say that, sorry for the word, but that, oh, because she's a woman,
she has to work
it's
hard,
easy for her. And they have I've seen so many of my apparently really liberal counterparts who will ask you, like you've talked about the problems of single girls, but the problems of mothers. You'll be at an event where you've been invited as much as your male counterpart has been invited, and they'll come to you and say, where have you left your children? Oh, by the way, you've also left your children somewhere. Am I asking you what you have done? Or, oh, by the way, who's looking after them? And apart from that, so on and so forth. And then so many people will say, because, oh, you're, and God forbid, if you're like a sort of pretty woman, then it gets even more difficult.
Because again, they're stereotyping you, aren't they? They're stereotyping you with that thing of beauty with brains. Oh, beauty with brains. I think that's a very offensive comment. If you are...
they wouldn't say handsome with brains, do
they? Exactly. So why?
That's an added advantage, isn't it?
Handsome with it, that's absolutely right.
And a rare one.
As the role that women play as mothers, and the kind of questions that you're saying are not posed to men, it's also because I feel like a lot of the times the rest of the things that a mother or a woman does is seen as something that is a duty for her to do, and her job is looked at as a choice.
Nobody's saying it's not. But it's just this assumption that she's working, so she must be neglecting her children.
Sure, no, I'm just saying that a woman's career path or her job is not given a priority because they seem that you're doing an unnecessary work out of your own choice. So bear with it, and you know it doesn't matter if you're
because I became a mother at very early age, and for the longest period I had to convince myself. I had so much guilt in my heart because even my mother didn't understand that why would I go to college and leave my child. So even I had to struggle with myself. But then being in England really helps me because I was given so much support, and that's where the societies are different. I mean, in many ways, our society gives a lot of strength to women, but in many ways, it also curtails the civil liberties. I used to take my daughter, little baby, to my university, and my tutors would help me, my colleagues will help me, they will give me so much respect.
You would have practical assistance.
And then there were creches where I could leave her. I could go to the library and leave her somewhere. How do we give these comforts to working women? What it looks to me in Pakistan, you are not giving the option to the woman to start a life and do work together.
And let me add to that. Let me add to that. Sorry if we are taking over your
program.
That's
okay. I was ready for this. I was ready for this. I knew I'd have to work a bit harder to get my questions in.
Isn't it better that we are talking and we are brainstorming and the ideas are coming up and the solutions and the problems are all going along hand in hand.
Program, exactly.
I think what Fereeha has said, it's ironic, it's unfortunate that let's assume there are 30 to 35 news and current affairs channels in Pakistan, and you don't have a single news director, female news director there, except one or two, and that too in the print, of course.
I became a bureau head in Islamabad, and I know how it was perceived everywhere.
Exactly, because you have women working in those offices, unless you have a woman in the place of power, in the place of authority, the society, the environment cannot understand the needs of women working in that organization unless there is someone, women in power there, women in authority there, women at an authoritative position there. So that's a huge difference. What you were talking about, that in Pakistan we don't have daycare centers for mothers.
If you do not have the practical assistance,
because we don't have any women there.
Because it's not being addressed. Exactly.
We don't have a woman at the policy making level.
It's just like they're blind that women may have children, or the children may need to come with them. They're just completely blind about that.
Okay, the pressures of
media. Any other female need for that matter in a workplace. Also another thing, Shabnam, that you were talking about, what sort of problems that you face, not just in terms of the opportunities that we're given or the gender pay gaps, it's also just very subtle things that you experience every day, from where you start your journey from home to when you reach office, and then the whole day that you stay there. The kind of privileges that a man enjoys is not the same that a woman does at the workplace.
So that's a kind of a harassment that you sort of endure from the minute you leave your home, isn't it? If you place it that way.
Yeah, but it's not just that. The way that a man, perhaps in my experience, is comfortable at office is not the way that I'm comfortable in office, because I have to be very composed in a lot of ways, because I have a price to pay with for every step, every word I say, which they don't.
Because there's a judgmental factor here.
Constantly.
So the judgmental factor on women in media, how do you deal with that?
By the way, I thought that for certain channels in Pakistan too, in the private sector, some of them are still very chauvinist. I mean, they wouldn't let female journalists thrive as much as they would provide the male counterparts or the male journalists that they have in their organization. So I think that's a lacking. Gharida also spoke about the lack of female heads or the bureaus, as Fereeha has mentioned, in private sectors or the channels that we have in Pakistan. I want to make a point about the females who have ever headed any sort of channel or any sort of organization here in Pakistan. I think we need to introspect as well, because as females, I need to give a chance and to encourage the females that work under me.
Absolutely.
I don't have to be jealous. I don't have to be envious that they're probably doing that they're probably facing the camera more than me, or they're probably doing better in a certain front. So I would try to pull their legs and let them down and try to make things difficult. So that, I think, has come out as an introspection point, that the women who are heading channels need to introspect.
I worked with a woman boss in England, and she is by far the one I learned the most from.
Because she was in
the
England.
one who gave me a lot of chances. And as far as what you were saying, that making these silly jokes and cranks, they have laws. Because I remember twice that someone said something, and my boss called me and she said, I hope you're not offended, I can go. And so she took notice. I didn't even know what my rights were at that time. So we need to
sensitization.
We can get better. Like we can change things. That's what we have to work at. So you need to make people understand what are their rights, because most of the times we teach our little girls that you have to stay quiet
yourself,
if somebody says something. You're not to answer back,
or
you're not to report it.
Just pointing out maybe perhaps jokes that are cracked on women or just things that are said to them. I was also talking about perhaps the ability to just laugh and smile in office with your colleagues, right? Which is not something that you can do as easily without a judgment.
In fact, if you didn't have that, awareness that you have to be a bit more controlled, you'd do a better job, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
If you were more relaxed in the workplace, you'd be able to do a better job.
Positive point also, because when after working in England, I came to Pakistan. It was my first report outdoors. I was sent to Sakkar. And the Prime Minister came, and there were about 18 male reporters, and I was the only female reporter, clad in my chadar. And I just asked him, can I have an interview? And just out of respect of being a woman, I think, he stopped, and I got that chance to interview him. It went straight on live television. And that gave me a chance, and I was registered as a serious reporter. So yes, there's certain elements which you will not find in any other country. They'll give you that extra respect, like if your tires burst outside on the road.
Many people will stop their car to help you.
If I could make a disclaimer to this, laws in Pakistan which handle harassment at workplace for women have been made controversial. And the people who are dealing with those laws, say Kashmala Tariq for an instance, even she would narrate you tales of harassment that she has confronted herself. So what difference does that make? When you try to practice or exercise those laws, they're always made controversial. Or there's always made...
Right.
But
Made
laws
should be implemented.
Those
And
laws
then
are
we-
very difficult
to prove.
yeah, to prove. And there's
Yeah.
so much that you you choose to ignore every day, and which perhaps doesn't amount to harassment in the eyes of so many men who are making those laws and then judging
Wouldn't
them
you say
and
staring?
themselves.
Wouldn't you just say staring is harassment?
I
You're going
would.
outside and it's
Or
somebody
if
staring
you
at
feel
you.
anything that makes you feel uncomfortable and is not wanted
Even the
is
lack of
harassment.
opportunity that you're subjected to is a harassment, I
but of
believe, at
course.
workplace.
But at one of the private channels where I worked, a person was fired for staring. So there are exceptions for staring indecently. So but you have to find these examples, glorify them properly, and let people know there are certain places where it's still there are these norms of decency. I would want my workplace to be the kind of place where would I want my sisters to work. If a male thinks
Where
like
the men
that,
who are
if
working
he
in
can
that
bring his wife
organisation would
there,
be
if he can
happy
bring
with
his
their
sister
sisters
there,
working
that's
there.
what you want.
You know, that's what they
Yes.
want. And I think, now, sort of for the male viewers as well that we have watching this program, this is not, we're not against you. This is about exactly a brand of feminism, if you want, where we want equal opportunities, and at the same way we want to respect men and have equal respect. That's the main thing of women. The balance for better, the theme of the Women's Day. So sort of, to get a different angle on this program and this discussion that we're having, could either tell me about a male presence in your life. It could be a mentor, a teacher, a family member who has, really contributed and made you the person you are today.
One thing I would like to add, Shabnam, with your kind permission, to what we were discussing earlier, that would men be comfortable with their sisters, with their family members who are women working in the area where they are? I would like to add, let's talk beyond being comfortable with their sisters, being comfortable with their family members who are women. I mean, regardless of a mother, of a sister analogy, a man has to respect a woman for a human being that she is. Full stop. That's it. Regardless of, I mean, जैसे हमारे यहाँ कहा जाता है कि जो आपके घर में माँ बहन नहीं है. I mean, hold on. I mean, you don't have to equalize the other human being with your family members. You just have to respect her being a single entity, being another human being who has an identity of herself.
Very good point.
That's what I wanted to point out. Now, coming back to your question, yes, that's very important. Just like Fereeha and Mona and Sana, they have mentioned as well, the support system is the base of any development. And as goes the old saying that men and women, they are the two wheels of the same cart. So that goes absolutely right when it comes to family. So in my case, it was my father. In my family, it was the opposite. My mother was kind of conservative. I would say not that conservative, but she used to have, no, why is she going outside the house? Why is she going alone? Yeah, I mean, and we are talking like 35 years back, as a like of thing. So my father was always the one who stood with us, who stood beside us. I was the first one in my family who stepped out of the whole city to move, to relocate to another station, all alone. But he was the one who supported.
He gave you that confidence.
Exactly, he gave me that confidence, and he gave my mother that confidence that let her go out and let her explore herself. So that's very important. That brings us to the point where I was saying that the society does not has to confine women into certain roles, into certain parameters. They have to let them go. And I would like to quote her, the book by Malala's father, Ziauddin Yousafzai, Let Her Fly.
Let her fly, so true.
Just let her fly.
What you've said is so right, because, I mean, do you have to be a sister or a mother or a wife to be someone
to gain respect?
Important?
No.
Exactly, it's who you are. Okay, Fereeha, you tell us about the male presence.
Which reminds me of the syndrome when certain people come to you and say that, oh, I'm your brother. That also
exactly.
We don't need brothers.
And to assure you that I respect you, he would put you up as a namesake sister.
So just take us, I agree with you, take us as we are, and we're happy with that. But yes, you can't do anything without support. I mean, I just made a comparison between West and Pakistan, but then there's also a lot of support in Pakistan that you will not necessarily get if you're living alone in Europe or somewhere else. And I spent half of my time there and then here, so there are pros and cons. Over there, like we had crushes, we had understanding, we had respect about being able to study and do a lot of other things. Here I had a lot of extra family support as well to help raise my children. So I got a lot of flack from my mother. Even to this day, she would rather have me go and teach at a school and come back by 2 o'clock. And the timings are atrocious for her. She doesn't understand why I go in the evening. But it was my father from day one who always encouraged me, go there, do this, do that. And there was, I always say that trust your children. When you trust them and talk to them,
amazing things will
then there
happen.
are these automatic gold chains around you, which will not let you go astray. You'll fly, but you will not go astray.
Exactly,
because
you have been grounded.
You have to keep an eye on your children.
You have been grounded.
That's a job. But if you try to hold them like territory, then they will resist.
Rebellion.
So trust is the biggest thing to get out of, and I think these are the best chains of trust that you give to your children, and that's what happened with me. That I knew I could do everything,
You
but
knew
without
how
them
far to
telling
fly.
what I was not to do.
You knew
So
how far to
and
fly.
even like Gharida, when I had to come live alone in Islamabad, for some time I lived alone in London also, but that was different. But in Islamabad, because my family was, part of my family was in London, part of it was in Karachi. So it was my father who told me how to do it, who pushed me.
Fantastic.
And similarly, while raising children, there was a lot of sacrifice done by my spouse as well. So it is always
the best.
yes,
strong,
it's the father.
That's
in there.
absolutely true, because what I was going to
lives of
say
their
right now was,
daughters.
I was going to say that for you it's your father, for you it's your father. For me as well, it was my father.
Yeah.
He was the one who was the real force
You should
behind
tell
me.
us
you
about
see.
your life as well. We haven't let you talk. Yes, please go
I
ahead.
don't think we
Yes.
have that much time. Share my stories with
Yes,
you.
yes, you should. You should.
Well, my story was that I was like you. I had the same sort of I was a writer first.
Right.
I was into poetry and writing, and I was about 7 years old when I wrote my first poem, which was published in a magazine in England. And the reason I wrote the poem was till 7, I was an only child. And so when my brother was born, I didn't know what to do with all these emotions. So I wrote this poem, and it came out really well. And again, my dad was just so happy about it that he sent it off to a magazine over there to get published. And that was my first publication at that time. And so I was into writing. And I joined, I came to PTV. My first time I went on air was in 2002.
Right.
And that was reading the news. And I honestly thought I was going to have a heart attack on air because it was just so, I really didn't want to do live television. I wanted to do recording television. And everything grew from there. And it's been a fantastic experience because I was born and brought up in England, but I felt that living in Pakistan, I've had so many opportunities and so many things to do. So it's
That's
fantastic.
what I was saying. That there are a lot of pros and cons.
Yeah,
Here
lots of
you
pros
get
and
a lot of
cons,
opportunity.
exactly.
But
So Mona, let's ask you.
Women need to outshine in Pakistan, I believe, more so than in any other country or any other developed world, because we need examples to go by. But okay, myself, I would totally agree, and I can't agree more with you, Fereeha, for the fact that, of course, and Gharida as well, that fathers have been the focal persons in all of our lives. And whenever that you see a strong woman, you must also always go back to her father, because that is where she's coming from, and that is where she's...
Look, Mona, another thing. The father knows the psyche behind
And
the
Shabnam,
environment that she's
fathers
going
are
to
naturally
face. Yeah.
and genetically very close to daughters.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
sons
they're
don't have
protected.
that bonds with their fathers as daughters do.
For sure.
They don't take that level of liberties. I mean, I remember back in my nurseries or my kindergartens, I would go to school to PTMs and parent-teacher meetings, and okay, PTM stands for something else.
I was going to say that.
Okay, right, that's great. Okay, right now we're going to go for a short break, and we'll come back. We'll have to say goodbye right now to Sana. Sana's going to leave us, and then we're going to be joined by Meher. So thank you very much. Thank you for being on the program. It's been wonderful, Sana. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, don't change the channel. welcome back to the programme. We're having a fantastic discussion here. We're talking about women in media. We've got some really wonderful, famous faces from television channels in Pakistan. We've recently been joined by Meher Bukhari from Dawn. Meher, thank you very much for joining us. It's lovely to see you. Okay, so we've had a lot of conversation about, the experience of women in media, and let's talk about you. What struggles have you faced? Where have you had to prove yourself more than a man in your position?
I think you'll have to do another 60-minute program.
Okay.
And Ferry will double that. Yeah, she's actually walked me through most of the struggles. But yes, it's been a roller coaster ride, to say the least. I think when I started, I was probably one of the youngest people doing this, and automatically it's people.
I remember you used to do a morning show.
I started
and
the
I used
morning
to watch
show
you on that morning show, and I think it's really good.
Yes. Until that, it was fine. Nobody had an issue. Because that's not, of course, right? You're not trespassing into the man's world of politics and current affairs. So it was all great till then. And then I slowly made it to 7 o'clock, and then to 8 o'clock, and the difficulties and the obstacles started increasing. I think it's just a mindset. A lot of barriers initially with the fact that, oh my God, you're a woman and you're talking politics. You're a woman and you're dealing with current affairs. Do you know what you're talking about? B, they hold your age against you. And the sad part is, like, you don't see any of that now. Shukr alhamdulillah, touch wood, you see women thriving and doing so well in front of the camera and behind camera and holding their own and really doing phenomenal work. But I think back then, even though it's just been, over a decade or something, but it wasn't, people weren't very okay with it. And I think I got a good break because it was a new channel opening up. It was a new management, and it was a different mindset altogether. There were a lot of people who were very emancipated, men who had worked all over the world, had great exposure. So that helped me a lot. And when I did begin, I mean, there were a lot of difficulties. I mean, with the language barrier, for one thing. I wasn't very fluent in Urdu, in reading or writing Urdu, so I had to learn that from scratch. I was an easy Urdu student through school during my O-levels and A-levels. So that was one of the bigger obstacles, but the management was good. They walked me through it. It was fine, but it wasn't.
Can I quickly add here that I think Meher is the pioneer of the women talk shows now in that way, because I can associate with her when she was doing her 8 p.m. slot. I don't think any other, I was given an 8 p.m. slot by the same management. We were in the sister channels, but then mine was a smaller channel, and that was the mainstream channel. And remember when we even went on an outdoor shoot, we were given so much flack that why are these women sitting with politicians? So you're right, that things have changed so much, because and it started from her, and then a lot of other women were seen on the prime time.
Things have changed because women have made that change, the mindset, and I would sorry to say that, but that's the fact. The male mindset is still there. They're still cringe-worthy. Oh, she's moving forward. She's moving fast than us. But they can't do much about it because women have really thrived themselves out of it.
It seems like women have the motto of stop us if you can.
There were other women also, but I think she gave that platform. It just became easy afterwards. That's what I think.
What has reporting in the field been like?
I think carrying on forward from her, I think at that time, just a quick thing, and then I'll talk about reporting as well. Now I do realize a lot of things, and at that time I didn't, because I think I had just got back from studying and living abroad for a decade, and I was wearing my pantsuits, and I was, walking the way I was walking, talking the way I was talking, not feeling like, anything was holding me back, not feeling that I had to be apologetic about what I was doing, or I had to take 2 steps back and let men lead. So I think Ferry has she spent a considerable time abroad working and studying, and so she came from the same mindset, but there were very few people at that time.
Yes,
and then eventually you saw the pantsuits were normal, the jackets were normal. It was okay for women to be doing that, which is great, alhamdulillah. But when you talk about reporting, I remember when I, during the floods, it was Silab ka time at that time, and we went out, and I was out in a caravan for over a month from one end of the country to another. And at the end of the day, do you know the kind of articles they wrote on me? Oh, she's doing flood coverage because she wants to get ratings. So it was ridiculous. And this is, by the way, women reporting. Women who were reporting. Of course, men would be doing that, right? I mean, you can understand that. It's a patriarchal society. It's a different mindset, but it hurts when it's actually other women.
So my next question is going to be, how do you handle negative publicity?
I couldn't initially. I used to cry my eyes out. I used to bawl my eyes out. I used to be... reading namaz and crying and just, you know, like just kind of like snuggling into my mother and wondering what I'm doing and wanting that family support. And I had a lot of that, alhamdulillah. I think over the years, all of us, I'm sure I can speak on everybody's behalf, we've all kind of grown thick skins. Because there's so much, you know, the sense of anonymity which social media brings. Like you have these keyboard warriors and people who are just actually dishing out like filth and anger.
And it's so easy to sit behind a computer and do all that stuff,
absolutely.
isn't it?
Even back then, some of our senior most journalists, I remember, they used to write really negative stuff about me out of nowhere, just because I remember there were a few shows I did questioning, where did you get plots from, what's your background, you know, there is it's not that neutral as we think it is. So it's just the problem is, I think eventually you don't have a choice. You just need to be thick-skinned and you need to kind of put your head up and just kind of roll on and keep
battling
working
on.
I'm sure on a daily basis all of us are actually witnessing and being at the receiving end of a lot of insults and criticism, and criticism is good, but sometimes, you know, there's a fine line between criticizing and getting personal.
Criticism is, you know, coming from where, and whose criticism
and you know, people don't know where to draw the line. They'll attack your family, your children, where you're coming from, your parents. I remember one of the bigger scandals and issues I went through back in summer when I went on to Dunya. There were actually people at my doorstep. People actually attacked my parents and my house. I had to leave the country for a month. I couldn't stay there. I was having a mental breakdown. I was the kind of acidic messaging I was getting and my parents were receiving at that time. It was just ridiculous. So I think there's...
What got you through that?
Just parents, a good support system, namaz, honestly, and then just eventually just kind of growing a thick skin.
Right.
Now you just read stuff and you're like, okay, and just move on.
You get used to it, isn't it?
I am. I'm sure all of you are as well. I mean, I'm used to it now.
Exactly.
I guess we're the privileged class, and yet talking about this, and imagine what would be of those who don't have that support, and who are out there and all by themselves and supporting their families and also supporting
their... Who don't have understanding husbands, who don't have understanding in-laws, who don't have understanding parents. She's absolutely right. We take so much for granted.
Intoxicated husbands and fathers and what not they're facing. I
mean, being women and having that...
I have no words, especially the men who say, I'm sure you asked for it.
Oh no,
what crap. I know women.
And that happens all over the world.
Whose families say this, you didn't carry yourself right.
And that happens all over the world. It's not just something for Pakistan. That happens all over the world. You will have the questioning of the victim. If the victim says anything, they will be the first one.
I had a sigh of relief.
I
once interviewed this Arancha Gonzalez, who is the director for ITC, International Trade Center. And she happens to be one great woman who's in that leading founding position. And she said it's a global phenomenon. So I had the sigh of relief. I was, so we're not just the sufferers here. They're all across the globe.
I think we're the only ones who don't have catharsis, though. The women she's talking about, they don't have an outlet. They can't get out there and say, turn back and say, you know what? I don't care what you say. I don't care what you feel. I'm going to go live my life. You don't have that support system. The society doesn't equip you or kind of support you to be out there doing your own thing. They still look down upon you if you're living singularly, if you're dressed a certain way. If so these are actually these barriers you keep have to.
Yeah. Too judgmental. That's a problem. Okay. Now, being women anchors and having platforms to speak on, are we doing enough justice in talking about women's issues?
No. I don't think so. No.
Because we're having this program right now. We're having this program right now.
And we do this just annually.
Exactly. I mean, is that enough? Can we say we've done our part?
No. You know why? Because, okay, yes, ideally, we should be talking about it once a month at least, but we're not. But that being said, I know one thing, everybody I know personally, people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, I do try to kind of impart this sense to them that, you know, you need to be independent. I mean, whether it's the help at home I have, the domestic help, whether it's these, I do a little bit of social work, whether it's those women I talk to. I don't know how much it resonates. I don't know how much they actually take home, but that's a little bit I can do. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. But I think in our everyday lives, the kind of people we're touching and speaking to and reaching out to, if we can even be a little bit of an example, I think that's still doing a lot more than I feel a lot of people out there think about it.
That's absolutely true. Okay, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the program, so it's been wonderful having you all. Fereeha and Gharida and Mona and Meher, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Meher, you joined us late.
No worries
I'm
at all.
sure you had so much.
It
was wonderful, exactly. And you know, I would like a very, very short message from each of you on this year's Women's Day?
Well, I would like to quote the theme of this year, balance for better. We have talked at length about the difficulties, the obstacles faced by women. I think we missed out the resolution and the solution part of that, and what the new government is doing.
We should have a series of programs, actually.
Absolutely,
Yeah, we should have a
should.
series
So
of
I
programs.
think we need to talk more and more about
Absolutely.
having this kind of conversation around in whatever context, in whatever capacity we are able to do that. So I think that's the need of the hour, and we need to keep pushing, especially the government, to do more for the women thing, for the women empowerment, not just on the International Women's Day, but even beyond that.
Something all around the year.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Gharida.
I think we should all make a little difference, whatever we can. As Meher just said, that we can't make a huge impact, but we can make little changes in our lives. For instance, if you're raising a little man at your home, you can teach him to be respectful towards women. If you are hiring a member of your team, so give the equal opportunity to the woman there. And at the same time, I think our strength is in being a woman. I do not agree that we have to emulate being a man to get those things. So realize your strength and be yourself.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Fereeha. Meher, please.
I don't know. I mean, I absolutely agree with Fereeha. I think that little changes that you can make, these messages should be imparted on a daily basis. I mean, I derive the most strength out of telling people I work with, people I interact with, that, you know what, don't take the fact that you're a woman as a weakness. It's a strength. And enjoy it, celebrate yourselves, and be independent. I think that's the biggest message. You need to be economically, financially independent, and then the world's your oyster.
Important, very important. Thank you so much, Meher. And Mona?
Well, that's my take-home lesson for the day, that we need to talk more about it. Everyone has spoken so, and we need to celebrate the maids and the house helps and any sort of strong women that we come across in our daily lives, because we are celebrated day in and day out, but they aren't in that
Excellent.
manner.
Add one thing.
Yes,
all the women who aren't working, please go out there and work. It'll emancipate you, empower
Change your
you.
life.
Self-esteem. Whoa, it's amazing.
Absolutely
Secondly,
true.
the women who are working and are questioning themselves or wanting to stop owing to whatever,
Or double guessing.
Guessing themselves, whatever pressures they're facing, don't ever stop. Whatever little you can manage, keep working at it.
Thank you all of you for being part of such a fantastic program.
Thank you.
Okay, and with that we come to the end of this program, but we really hope you've enjoyed this discussion. I have really had a wonderful time. I'm going to end with one of my poems that I've written, and this is food for thought as well. It's about honor killings. So the title is The Dishonored One. She was created after you, not as an afterthought, but because you needed companionship, to share moments and give each other strength. You may have walked on the moon and changed history, but she was given a miracle that no man could ever boast of, the marvel of giving life as ordained by the Creator. It was she who gave you those sons who went to war and then nursed back the wounded from the wars you started. She gave you might in more ways than one and stood side by side, working in fields, waiting to be harvested, and in making houses into homes. So then why in this world did you abuse her and strip her of all honor, robbing her pride and made being feminine a curse for her to bear? But when all will stand equal in front of the Lord, when that day will come, she will look into your eyes and ask, "Tell me, who is the dishonored one now?" And with that, goodbye. Thank you for watching.